The Gospel according to John, chapter 21, verses 1 through 6. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I am going out to fish." Simon Peter told them, and they said, "Well, we will go with you." They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. John continues to describe some of the events happened after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, where Jesus appeared to many people, including his disciples. And this is the 3rd time, according to what we read here today, that Jesus appears to the disciples, and it's in Galilee. Remember when the people who went in to look for the body in the tomb, Jesus appeared to them and told them that he will be in Galilee, going ahead of them, that the disciples were asked to go to Galilee, and that's what they did. And he appeared in random places. The post-resurrection appearances have been very puzzling and bewildering for the disciples and those who witnessed his appearance. He appeared on the way to Emmaus for a couple of people who were walking from Jerusalem to Emmaus, and then he explained to them about what happened, and we know the story in the Gospels about how their hearts were opened and they recognized Jesus after that, and he had dinner with them. And then we see the upper room where the disciples were locked in under locked doors, and Jesus all of a sudden appeared without even opening the door. They were bewildered, probably very afraid during that and puzzled. So Jesus appeared after resurrection in random places, in the ordinary times and the livings of our lives. And in this particular place where Jesus appeared was the place where they were deciding to plan to go to fishing in the lake or the Sea of Galilee. That's when Jesus appeared. Apparently they had decided to go back fishing and spend the whole night fishing, but did not catch anything. And that's when Jesus appeared and asked them, "Do you have any fish?" The disciples said, "No," they did not catch anything. And then Jesus said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net because of the large number of fish that they collected. So the disciples decided to go back to some profession that they knew. Most of the disciples, many of them, were fishermen when Jesus called them. Remember, Peter was one of them, who was a fisherman, and he left his net and his father's business and followed Jesus. And Jesus told him, "I will make you fishers of men." Not any more fishing in the sea, but you will be fishing in the world, going to the ends of the world. And then Peter followed him. So many others were also fishermen, according to what we can read from the Gospels. But this fishing trip, after 3 years of work with Jesus, they are planning on going back to their business, and was not a very successful trip, this first one. They did not catch any of them, any fish. They did an awful lot of work all night with no results. The disciples were in such a frustration because of the events happened with Jesus, and now they are more discouraged because they wanted to go back to their old profession, and that's not even working. They cannot catch any more fish. So I can imagine the lostness in their mind and the lack of hope and the frustration and the disappointment that they could see. Many times, we as Christians have to learn to deal with disappointments and dejections. To be a fisherman, you must be an expert in handling disappointments. It is a natural thing for the fishermen, because when they set out to the sea in the morning or early morning, they have no guarantee that they will catch any fish. Some days they will catch a lot of fish, and some days the weather may be bad, and they have to come back home early. Some days they toil all day, even if the weather is good, there will not be any fish. They will come back home empty-handed. This is their living. So you can imagine the amount of stress and the frustrations and the disappointments the fishermen have to handle on a daily life. This is a lesson that is teaching us through the Gospels that we as Christians have to deal with disappointments and frustrations as part of our lives. It is given to us every day. It is not always pleasant and beautiful as we like it to be. Talk about the curveballs in baseball and softball. Some people throw the curveballs at you, and the hitter may not be able to hit it because it doesn't know where it's coming from. So he cannot aim the ball. So those are the times when we get hit by curveballs and we don't know how to respond to it. So we have to be prepared for it. Life has all these big challenges that we have to face. The issue is not that if you have challenges, it is how we respond to the challenges that come in our lives. One of our friends used to say that the trouble with life is that the challenges are daily. That's true. Every day is a challenge if we look at it that way. Because God gives us more and more opportunities to do things, but they all come with challenges one way or other. We'll have to face those challenges as realities. The disciples were completely disappointed and frustrated and tired at this time, but they were encouraged by Jesus giving them the directions. And it's very interesting that he's giving the fishermen the direction when Jesus had no background in fishing. He was actually a carpenter's son. He probably had some training or some experience in carpentry work or some kind of woodwork or something like that. But here, he's giving the experience to Peter and other disciples who had years of experience fishing, particularly in this Sea of Galilee. They know exactly where the fish is and they know how to fish there. But Jesus comes and says, you are on the wrong side of the boat. I don't know if left side or right side make any difference. I don't know if that's what exactly it meant. But to me, what it means is that Jesus was telling them or teaching them, and the Bible is teaching us also through this event, that we ought to listen to God before we set up on our track on doing certain things. Did they really ask God and pray to God before they set back and take up their fishing business again? When Jesus and God wanted them to take up the business of going to the ends of the world and be my witnesses. But here they're deciding to go back to their fishing business. But they did not pray, or they did not ask God for God's will, God's guidance. That's what it teaches me. It may not be about the right side or the left side. So it is about also Jesus encouraging his disciples even at the lowest moment in their life. Some of the teachers who teach some of these karates and judos used to teach the students. The first thing that they teach is not about hitting others or how to make throws, particularly in judo. The first lessons they usually teach is how to get up when you fall. For the first few sessions are not about fighting or defending or attacking, but it is about when you fall, how do you get up, particularly in judo. That is the first several sessions of their classes. Because fall is going to be a reality in that sport. And if you don't know how to get up, when you fall, you are not going to be successful in judo. So they teach you very well about that. It's similar to this. You need to know how to get up when you are down. And that is what this event is teaching through Jesus' appearance to the disciples in this time of fishing. God is a faithful God who gives us second chances, third chances, and chances after chances. Even when we make the wrong decisions and we fail to follow his guidance in our lives, when we run away from him, he would not let us go. His love comes and follows us. As Jesus appeared to the disciples in the Sea of Galilee fishing, he will appear to us in our daily lives, in our day-to-day events of our lives and encouraging us and supporting us to go forward. And sometimes we have to lose to move forward. We may have to lose a lot of things that we had probably held on to before. We think that we have friends and families, and Jesus said, whoever wants to follow me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. Whoever who denies his family and father and mother is not fit for my kingdom. These are all the things that he taught them to the disciples. So they had to leave certain things before they can move forward in faith to follow Jesus. So in order to move forward, to advance in our faith journey and the mission that God has given us, we have to leave certain things behind. Here what they are doing is they already left the fishing business and followed Jesus. Now they are going back. That is not for a Christian journey. That's not what Christian journey is about. You don't go back to the things that you have left. We may have left a lot of things in our lives about our business or the habits or many other things that we thought were good at that time, but when we followed Jesus and accepted Jesus, we decided to leave all of those things. But going back is not an option for Christian disciples. And Jesus is telling them, you are not to go back. This is similar to the lesson that we read in Exodus, where the Israel were redeemed and rescued from the bondage in Egypt. And they left, running for their life. But when the difficulties in the desert and their journey came and struck them, and they didn't have food to eat and water to drink, and they were attacked from the enemies from various sides, they started murmuring and complaining to Moses and God. And at one point, we read in the book of Numbers that they complained to Moses that, why did you even bring us out of Egypt? But we could have been there. Let us go back. So that at least we can have food there and water there, even though it was torture and slavery there. But that's when they learned their lesson that God is still faithful. God can give manna from the sky and water from the rock, and the birds can become your meat. And God can provide even in the midst of the worst situations of our lives if we trust in God. That is what we read in Exodus and Numbers about the faithfulness of God. It's the same thing Jesus is teaching them, that I will not abandon you. I'll be there with you. Wherever you find yourselves abandoned or down, please don't go back. Always get up and do the work that I have given you to do. And God does not stop pursuing us or loving us. Jesus was the one who sought them after. He came to them. Throughout the Bible, we see that God's faithfulness, that kind of faithfulness in the scripture. Jesus comes to us in a way that is very familiar to us. A lot of people think that Jesus appears miraculously with thunder and lightning, and that's how God appears. Sometimes it could be like that way. But most of the time, God appears to us in our ordinary events of our lives. Maybe a little time when we are doing shopping, or when we are driving, or when we are talking to a neighbor, or when we are struggling with certain issues in our lives alone in our own prayer room. It could be very silently that God, Jesus will appear and gives us the direction to do. So Jesus appears in random places in our lives every day. If provided we respond to him and listen to his voice, we can hear him, that we can also follow him. Christian mission is not to go back to our old habits, but to start new habits every day. Not only fishing on one side of the boat, but also on the other side of the boat. It is God's will. Sometimes we get stuck in our old ways because we have not started new ones. Jesus is asking that you need to learn how to take up new tasks and new habits every day, to go beyond what we can do, to stretch our faith every day so that we can be more effective witnesses for the love of Jesus Christ. The writer of Hebrews gives us this advice, let us not go back. We look unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. And looking unto Jesus, we are running our race of faith towards him. We are looking to the future and not to the past. We should not be going back to our old habits. And also, Christian mission causes us to change our way of doing. we have to change our way of doing. Many times in many churches that we see that this is the way we have always been doing. Yes, that is why you are getting the results because of that. If we don't change what we are doing, we do not get a different result. In order to get a different result, we have to take measures to change our ways of doing things. So this is the way we have always done. It's not the part of Christian walk with Jesus. Jesus asked them to cast the net on the right side of the boat. Jesus made these strange suggestions to them, but they did not object. They just obeyed him. They did not ask, why Lord, what is the difference between the left and the right side of a boat if it is in the sea? It wasn't even a good or reasonable, logical thing to think that Jesus asked this way. Might probably thought that it was most the unreasonable way that they probably could have thought about it. But it just simply teaches that we need to do things God's way. The right side or left side is not the point. It is about how we do the work of God, with God and without God. With God, the future is promising. And without God, the future is going to be failure and disappointment. So this was also a reminder for Peter's calling when Jesus said, I will make you fishers of men. The greater picture that they wanted to learn from this lesson is that you are not going to be stuck in this fishing business on this side of the shore. You are going to the ends of the world to become fishers of men. And this also reminded probably Peter the first time when Jesus called him. Peter was fishing, and Peter did not have a lot of fish at that time. And that's when Jesus called him and told him to fish into the deep side of the sea. And that we read that in the Gospels early on when in Luke chapter 5, when Jesus called Peter to follow him. And that time also, Peter listened to this carpenter person, Jesus, and then followed Jesus' advice, and then he got a good catch also at that time. So this account illustrates the principle that we should never be afraid to change our method as long as it is at the direction of Jesus. Sometimes it may not seem to be the logical thing to do. God's ways are different from our ways, and God's thoughts are different from our thoughts. The story here changes from a story of failure to a story of faith. That is what people of faith will have. There is no failure in our lives. God can bring out success through every failures that we think are failures, because if we have faith, we can be conquerors through Jesus Christ. That's what the scripture says. Many times when we fall, we sometimes get afraid. We consider ourselves to be failures, but God wants us to step up in faith. The power of resurrection over sin and death comes and after suffering and shame. After the cross is the resurrection. Only after the suffering is the power of resurrection. We may struggle through the moment now, but eventually there is promise of deliverance. So let us move forward without being afraid. Let not fear conquer our thoughts. Let faith conquer our thoughts and our actions. There was a farmer who, the story probably I've told you before, a donkey fell into a ditch, and the farmer tried his best to get him out of the ditch, and it was too deep and narrow that he could not get out. So he decided to put him down in that ditch. So he called his friends and started dumping dirt on top of this donkey in this well. And they started piling up this dirt and started throwing this mud over the dirt over this donkey so that they can bury him inside in this ditch and this pit. But every time they throw one shovel of dirt or two shovels of dirt on him, he will shake it off and he will step up on that dirt. So they continued to do that, and every time they put more dirt on him, he would shake it up and then step up. It's a story, it says that shake it up and step up. Eventually, after doing a lot of this exercise of dumping dirt on this donkey, and every time he shake up and step up on it, eventually you all know what happens. The ditch will be covered with dirt and the donkey walks away. So as people of God, the more dirt that pile upon us can be a blessing. Shake it up and step up on faith. And God is faithful that we can walk with victory with the power of the resurrection. May the good Lord bless us with these words as we go.